Gun. They've got guns. The shrill scream cut through the afternoon air like a blade through silk, shattering the peaceful hum of children's laughter and birthday party chatter. Karen Whitmore stood 30 feet away, her perfectly manicured finger pointing directly at three preschoolers who were giggling as they chased each other around the playground equipment. In her other hand, she gripped a silver-painted toy revolver that gleamed menacingly in the summer sunlight. The children froze mid-stride, their bright neon water guns still dripping with harmless streams of chlorinated park fountain water. Little Marcus, barely 4 years old, dropped his yellow squirt gun immediately, his dark eyes wide with confusion and fear. His sister Keisha, 6, clutched her pink water pistol protectively against her chest, while their cousin Damon, 5, began to cry softly, not understanding why the angry white woman was shouting at them. I had been watching the scene unfold from the picnic table where I sat with my notepad, ostensibly enjoying my neighbor's backyard birthday celebration that had spilled over into Millbrook Community Park. What started as a beautiful Saturday afternoon gathering had just taken a sinister turn, and my trained eye immediately caught the dangerous inconsistencies in Karen's behavior and the weapon she brandished so carelessly. The park had been alive with the sounds of celebration just moments before. Colorful balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze, tied to every available fence post and picnic table. The smell of grilled hamburgers and hot dogs wafted from the community barbecue pit, mixing with the sweet aroma of vanilla birthday cake that sat waiting on the covered pavilion table. Parents lounged in folding chairs, cold drinks in hand, while children of all ages ran freely between the playground equipment and the open grass areas. It was the kind of idyllic community gathering that suburban neighborhoods dream about, where families come together regardless of background or circumstance to celebrate life's simple pleasures. The Henderson family had organized this birthday party for their twin daughters, and they'd graciously invited everyone from the surrounding streets. Kids played with sidewalk chalk. Adults shared stories and laughter, and the ice cream truck's distant melody promised sweet treats to come. But now, tension crackled through the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every parent turned toward the commotion, hands instinctively reaching for their children. The atmosphere shifted from celebratory to dangerous in the space of a heartbeat. Karen Whitmore had been a fixture in the Millbrook Homeowners Association for nearly a decade, and her reputation preceded her wherever she went. She was the woman who measured grass height with a ruler, who called code enforcement on neighbors for leaving their garbage cans out 30 minutes too long, who organized petition drives against playground equipment because it was too colorful for the neighborhood aesthetic. Her platinum blonde hair was always perfectly styled, her workout clothes always pristine, despite never showing signs of actual exercise, and her voice always carried the authority of someone who believed the world should bend to her will. What most people didn't know about me, however, was that I wasn't just another suburban dad enjoying a weekend barbecue. My name is David Chen, and for the past 8 years, I've worked as a senior safety auditor for the Consumer Product Safety Commission. My job involves investigating dangerous products, counterfeit toys, and illegal replicas that pose serious risks to public safety. I've seen countless cases of realistic toy weapons causing panic, injury, and worse. I can spot a dangerous imitation firearm from 50 yards away, and the silver object in Karen's hand set off every alarm bell in my professional consciousness. Karen stormed across the grass with purposeful strides, her designer sneakers crushing the dandelions that dotted the park's natural landscape. "This is a crime scene," she declared, her voice rising with each step. "These children are engaging in terrorist activities. I'm calling the police immediately." The absurdity of her statement would have been laughable under different circumstances. 3 preschoolers with brightly colored plastic water guns, designed with safety features and clearly marked as toys, were somehow terrorists in her mind. But the weapon she carried was no joke. From my position, I could see the realistic weight distribution, the absence of required safety markings, and the dangerous metallic finish that made it nearly indistinguishable from an actual firearm. Mrs. Henderson, the party host, stepped forward with her hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "Karen, please, these are just children playing with water toys. It's a birthday party." "Don't you dare tell me what I'm seeing," Karen snapped, wheeling around to face the older woman. "I know weapons when I see them, and I know suspicious behavior when I witness it. These children are clearly being trained for something, and I won't stand by and let it happen in my neighborhood." The racist undertones of her accusations hung in the air like toxic smoke. Every adult present understood the implications of her words, the dangerous assumptions she was making about 3 innocent children based solely on their skin color. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the soft whimpering of frightened children. I stood up slowly, my trained instincts taking over. Years of dealing with dangerous situations had taught me to move deliberately, to assess threats, and to prioritize public safety above all else. The replica gun in Karen's hand posed a significant risk, not just to the children she was threatening, but to everyone in the vicinity. If law enforcement arrived and saw her wielding what appeared to be a real weapon, the situation could escalate beyond anyone's control. "Ma'am, I need you to put that weapon down immediately," I said, using the calm but authoritative tone I'd perfected during years of safety inspections. "You're creating a dangerous situation for everyone here." Karen turned her attention to me, her eyes blazing with indignation. "And who exactly are you to tell me what to do? I'm protecting this community from criminals." "I'm someone who recognizes an illegal replica firearm when I see one," I replied, taking a measured step closer. "That weapon you're holding violates federal safety regulations, and brandishing it in a public space constitutes multiple criminal offenses." For the first time since the confrontation began, uncertainty flickered across Karen's face. She glanced down at the silver toy in her grip, then back at me, trying to assess whether I was bluffing or possessed actual knowledge that could threaten her position. "This is perfectly legal," she protested, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "I bought it at a reputable store." From where I pressed, knowing that legitimate toy retailers would never sell such a realistic replica without proper safety markings, because any store selling that particular model is violating federal commerce regulations. The standoff stretched into what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 90 seconds. Parents began quietly gathering their children, creating distance between their families and the escalating confrontation. Some pulled out their phones, recording the incident with shaking hands. Others dialed emergency services, unsure whether they were witnessing a community dispute or something far more dangerous. Karen's phone was already pressed to her ear, and I could hear fragments of her conversation with the 911 dispatcher. "Yes, I need police immediately at Millbrook Community Park. We have an active shooter situation. Multiple weapons. Children involved. Please hurry." The false report sent ice through my veins. Filing a fraudulent emergency report was a serious federal crime. But more importantly, it would bring armed law enforcement officers to a scene where confused children held water toys, and an unstable woman wielded a realistic replica firearm. The potential for tragedy was enormous. "You need to call them back right now and correct that report," I demanded, my professional composure beginning to crack under the weight of the situation. "You're putting everyone here at risk with false information." "False information," Karen laughed harshly. "I'm looking at weapons right now. Those children are armed and dangerous." She gestured wildly with her replica gun toward the 3 preschoolers, who had huddled together near the playground equipment, still holding their colorful water toys. Marcus was crying openly now. Confused and terrified by the adult confrontation, he couldn't understand. Keisha had wrapped her arms around her younger brother, trying to comfort him while fighting back her own tears. Damon stood frozen, clutching his blue squirt gun like a security blanket. The contrast between Karen's hysterical accusations and the reality of the situation was staggering. These children posed no threat to anyone. Their water guns were clearly toys, brightly colored plastic implements designed for harmless summer fun. They bore no resemblance to actual firearms, featured obvious safety designs, and were being used exactly as intended by their manufacturers. Meanwhile, the weapon in Karen's possession was a different matter entirely. As a federal safety auditor, I had encountered this particular model before during a multi-state investigation into illegal replica imports. The silver-painted plastic was designed to mimic the appearance of a real revolver, complete with realistic weight distribution achieved through metal inserts. It lacked the required orange safety tip, bore no visible toy markings, and had been manufactured overseas in violation of numerous safety regulations. These replicas had been banned from import specifically because they were indistinguishable from real firearms at a distance. Law enforcement officers couldn't differentiate between them and actual weapons during high-stress situations, leading to tragic confrontations across the country. The fact that Karen was brandishing one while making false reports about armed children created a perfect storm of dangerous circumstances. "Put the weapon down, Karen," I said again, this time with more urgency. "The police are going to arrive expecting an active shooter situation. If they see you holding that replica, they won't have time to determine whether it's real or fake." For a moment, she seemed to consider my words, but then her face hardened with renewed determination. "I'm not putting anything down until these criminals are arrested. I know what I saw, and I won't be intimidated by their accomplices." The accusation that I was somehow complicit in imaginary criminal activity would have been laughable if the situation weren't so dire. But Karen's paranoia had reached levels that made rational discussion impossible. She had constructed a narrative in her mind where 3 innocent children represented a threat that required her armed intervention, and no amount of logic or evidence would convince her otherwise. I could hear sirens in the distance now, multiple vehicles approaching from different directions. The 911 dispatcher had clearly treated Karen's report as a legitimate active shooter situation, which meant armed officers would arrive prepared for the worst-case scenario. The margin for error was shrinking rapidly. "Everyone needs to get behind the pavilion structure right now," I called out to the remaining families, my voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to emergency situations. "Keep your children close and stay down until this is resolved." Most parents immediately complied, gathering their kids and moving toward the covered picnic area that offered both shelter and distance from the confrontation. A few lingered, unwilling to abandon the scene entirely, but they positioned themselves behind trees and playground equipment where they could observe while remaining relatively safe. "Mrs. Henderson approached the 3 frightened children with her arms outstretched. "Marcus, Keisha, Damon, come here, sweethearts. Let's go find your parents." "Nobody move!" Karen shouted, swinging her replica weapon toward the elderly woman. "Those children are evidence in a criminal investigation. They stay right where they are until the police arrive." The sight of a grown woman pointing a realistic firearm at terrified preschoolers was more than I could bear as both a federal safety official and a human being. Every instinct in my body screamed that I needed to intervene before the situation spiraled completely out of control. "Karen, I'm going to show you my federal identification," I said, slowly reaching into my wallet. "I work for the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and I'm ordering you to surrender that illegal replica immediately." I held up my official CPSC badge and identification card. the gold shield glinting in the afternoon sunlight. Karen's eyes narrowed as she tried to process this new information, clearly not expecting to encounter federal law enforcement at a neighborhood birthday party. "That could be fake," she said, but her voice wavered with uncertainty. "Anyone can buy a badge online." "You're welcome to verify it when the police arrive," I replied calmly. "But in the meantime, you're in violation of federal statutes regarding replica firearms, false emergency reports, and threatening behavior toward minors. I'm placing you under citizens' detention until law enforcement can take custody." The sirens were growing louder now, and I could see the first police cruiser turning into the park entrance. Behind it, 2 more vehicles followed, along with what appeared to be a tactical response unit. Karen's false report had triggered a full emergency response, bringing armed officers into a situation that had already spiraled beyond reasonable control. "You can't detain me," Karen protested, but she was backing away from me now, finally seeming to understand that she might be in serious legal trouble. "I'm the victim here. I'm the one who called for help." "By filing a false report and brandishing an illegal weapon," I said, continuing to advance slowly while keeping my hands visible and my movements non-threatening. "You've committed multiple federal crimes. Karen, the best thing you can do now is cooperate and put that replica down before someone gets hurt." The first police vehicle screeched to a halt near the park entrance, and I could see officers emerging with their weapons drawn. They would be scanning the area for armed suspects based on Karen's fraudulent report, and the sight of her holding what appeared to be a real gun would immediately mark her as a threat. "Officers," I shouted, raising my hands above my head while keeping my badge visible. "Federal Safety Auditor. The woman with the silver weapon is holding an illegal replica. The children have water toys only." My training and emergency response protocols kicked in automatically. Clear communication with law enforcement was essential to prevent tragic misunderstandings. I needed to immediately distinguish between actual threats and false alarms, identify all weapons present, and provide accurate information about the situation. The lead officer, a veteran sergeant with graying temples, approached with his service weapon drawn, but pointed toward the ground. His eyes swept the scene, taking in the birthday party decorations, the frightened families, the crying children, and Karen with her replica revolver. "Ma'am, put the weapon down immediately," he commanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of law enforcement. "Place it on the ground and step away." For a moment, I thought Karen might comply. She looked around at the assembled officers, the scared families, the children she had terrified, and seemed to finally grasp the magnitude of what she had done. But then her paranoia reasserted itself, and she raised the replica gun higher. "These people are criminals," she screamed at the officers. "Those children have weapons. I'm protecting the community." The next few seconds stretched into an eternity. Multiple officers trained their weapons on Karen, while simultaneously trying to assess the threat level posed by 3 preschoolers holding brightly colored water guns. The tactical response team spread out to secure the perimeter, while paramedics stood ready behind their ambulance. I realized that I was probably the only person present who could definitively identify the nature of both sets of weapons and provide the critical information needed to resolve the situation safely. My years of experience with replica firearms and toy safety regulations had prepared me for exactly this type of scenario. "Sergeant, this is my federal identification," I said, slowly approaching the lead officer with my badge extended. "I can confirm that the children are holding legitimate water toys with proper safety markings. The woman's weapon is an illegal replica that violates multiple federal regulations." The sergeant glanced at my credentials, then back at the scene. His experienced eyes could distinguish between the obvious toys in the children's hands and the realistic replica Karen wielded. but he still needed to neutralize the immediate threat she posed. "Ma'am, this is your final warning," he called out to Karen. "Drop the weapon now, or we will use force to disarm you." Karen's resolve finally crumbled under the weight of multiple police officers, pointing real weapons in her direction. The replica gun slipped from her trembling fingers and clattered onto the concrete walkway, where it immediately became obvious that it was indeed a toy, albeit a dangerously realistic one. The moment she was disarmed, officers moved quickly to secure the scene. Karen was placed in handcuffs while being read her rights, her earlier bravado replaced by shocked confusion as she began to comprehend the legal consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, other officers approached the three children with gentle voices and open hands. "It's okay. Kids, you're safe now. Can you show us your toys?" Marcus, Keisha, and Damon held up their water guns with shaking hands, the bright colors and obvious safety features immediately apparent to anyone who looked closely. The contrast between their harmless toys and Karen's illegal replica was stark and damning. As the immediate crisis passed, I took the opportunity to examine Karen's weapon more closely. It was exactly what I had suspected, a banned import that violated numerous federal safety regulations. The metal components inside the plastic housing gave it realistic weight, while the silver paint job eliminated any visual cues that might identify it as a toy. It was precisely the type of dangerous replica that my agency worked to keep off the market. "This weapon is part of a series we've been tracking," I explained to the investigating officers. "They're manufactured overseas and smuggled into the country through various channels. We've had multiple incidents where they've been mistaken for real firearms." The paperwork alone would take hours to complete. Karen faced charges for filing false police reports, threatening behavior toward minors, public endangerment, and possession of illegal replica weapons. The federal charges would be even more serious, potentially including violations of import regulations and consumer safety laws. But as I watched the three children being comforted by their parents and the other families slowly emerging from their hiding places, I felt a profound sense of relief that the situation had been resolved without physical harm. The psychological trauma was significant, particularly for the children who had been targeted, but everyone was safe. Mrs. Henderson approached me as the police finished their initial interviews. "Thank you for stepping in," she said quietly. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." "Just doing my job," I replied, though we both knew it had been far more than professional duty that motivated my intervention. Those children deserved to play without fear. The investigating sergeant approached with his notepad ready. "We're going to need a full statement from you. Mr. Chen, your expertise in replica weapons will be crucial for the prosecution." Over the next 2 hours, I provided detailed testimony about the illegal nature of Karen's weapon, the safety features present in the children's water toys, and the federal regulations that had been violated. My official report would become part of the evidence package that would likely send Karen to federal prison. As the sun began to set, the birthday party attempted to resume some semblance of normalcy. The cake was finally cut. Though many of the children were too upset to eat, parents gathered in small groups, discussing the incident in hushed tones while keeping watchful eyes on their kids. Marcus, Keisha, and Damon had been reunited with their parents, who alternated between comforting their traumatized children and expressing their gratitude that the situation hadn't escalated to tragedy. The 3 water guns sat abandoned near the playground equipment, no longer symbols of innocent fun, but reminders of how quickly joy could turn to terror. I found myself thinking about the broader implications of what had occurred. Karen's actions weren't just about toy weapons or neighborhood disputes. They reflected deeper issues of racial bias, community division, and the dangerous assumptions people make about children based on their appearance. Her willingness to terrorize 3 preschoolers revealed a level of prejudice that was both shocking and sadly predictable. The news media arrived within hours, drawn by reports of the incident on police scanners. Local television stations set up their cameras and interviewed witnesses, while reporters reached out to my agency for official statements about replica weapon regulations. The story would make national headlines. Another example of how quickly misunderstandings could spiral into crisis. But there was also something positive emerging from the tragedy. The community had rallied together in the face of Karen's aggression, with neighbors of all backgrounds standing up to protect innocent children. Mrs. Henderson had risked her own safety to intervene, while other parents had documented the incident and provided crucial evidence for prosecution. As I finally prepared to leave the park, I was approached by Marcus and Keisha's mother, a young woman named Shanice, who had been working late and missed the initial incident. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was strong as she spoke. "I want to thank you for protecting my babies," she said, her hand resting on my arm. "They told me what you did, how you stood up to that woman when she was scaring them. No child should have to experience what they went through today," I replied. "I'm just grateful that everyone is safe." "Marcus keeps asking why the lady was angry at him," Shanice continued, her voice breaking slightly. "How do you explain hatred to a 4-year-old? It was a question I couldn't answer, a reality that no parent should have to face. But I could see the strength in this woman, the determination to help her children heal from their trauma, while teaching them that the world contained far more good people than bad ones. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. Karen was denied bail due to the serious nature of her charges and her demonstrated instability. The federal prosecutor assigned to the case was particularly interested in the replica weapon violations, seeing an opportunity to set a precedent that would deter others from importing or possessing such dangerous toys. My testimony proved crucial during the preliminary hearing. I was able to provide detailed technical evidence about the weapon's construction, its violation of federal safety standards, and the specific regulations that had been broken. The judge was particularly concerned about Karen's false emergency report, noting that such behavior could have led to tragic consequences for everyone involved. The case also prompted a broader investigation into the source of Karen's replica weapon, working with customs officials and international trade regulators. We traced the gun back to a network of illegal importers who had been flooding the market with dangerous toys. Several arrests were made, and thousands of similar replicas were seized before they could reach consumers. 6 months later, Karen pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of probation with mandatory community service and anger management counseling. The judge specifically noted that her actions had traumatized innocent children and endangered an entire community. But perhaps more importantly, the incident had sparked meaningful change in the Millbrook neighborhood. The Homeowners Association underwent a complete restructuring, with new leadership committed to inclusive community building rather than exclusionary enforcement. Property management companies began implementing training programs about unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity. Mrs. Henderson organized a series of community healing events, bringing families together for activities that celebrated diversity and promoted understanding. The park where the incident occurred was renamed Unity Park, with new playground equipment that encouraged children of all backgrounds to play together safely. Marcus, Keisha, and Damon gradually recovered from their trauma with the help of counseling and the support of their extended community. They returned to playing with water toys, though always under the watchful eyes of parents who understood how quickly innocence could be threatened. Their resilience was remarkable, a testament to the strength of children and the healing power of love. As for me, the incident reinforced my commitment to consumer safety and the importance of keeping dangerous products away from children. I continued my work with the CPSC, but with a deeper understanding of how my expertise could make a difference in crisis situations. The case became a teaching example in our training programs, demonstrating how federal regulations protect not just consumers, but entire communities. The silver replica gun was eventually destroyed, along with hundreds of similar weapons seized in the broader investigation. But the lessons it taught about bias, assumptions, and the power of standing up for what's right would endure long after the metal was melted down and recycled. Standing in Unity Park a year later, watching children of all colors playing together with bright, safe toys while their parents chatted comfortably nearby, I was reminded that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about healing, growth, and the collective commitment to ensure that what happened to Marcus, Keisha, and Damon never happens to anyone else's children. The community had emerged stronger from its darkest moment, bound together by shared values of protection, inclusivity, and hope. And sometimes, in a world that often seems divided by differences, that's the most powerful victory of all.